It's hard to find what you know where you are. Wanna keep you hiding where the sun is dark. The sun is dark.
Hello and welcome to yet another episode of the Ascended Life Podcast. I'm Darrell.
And I'm Kesley. So excited to be with you tonight. And if you caught us the last episode, we shared about our ayahuasca experience. We're going to take that even deeper tonight.
We really are.
Talking about a hot topic. A lot of people have been asking me about the integration process. So we're going to share our process tonight.
Date night special. So tonight is the Ascended Life Podcast date night special.
Yes.
So thank y'all for joining us tonight on the date night special. We out here, you know. Before we dive in, we'd like to thank tonight's sponsor of our podcast, DJ. We know her as DJ La Bonita, but DJ Bonita. Why am I like I don't speak Spanish now? It's DJ the girl. If it's La Bonita, and if it's Bonita, it's the small one or something like that. I don't know why I'm acting like I never interpreted
Isn't
that.
Bonita like
or pretty
beautiful?
Or beautiful?
Pretty,
yeah.
beautiful,
So
yes.
the beautiful or pretty or the small beauty, I don't know. But anyway, shout out to DJ Bonita. She's our personal family DJ. This woman is amazing. She DJs for Delta Airlines, like all their corporate events. The Imaginarium, she had a couple of contracts with them in Atlanta. Great DJ, phenomenal,
great
amazing
energy,
DJ.
So much fun, just like a spirit, a soul that you want at your party. That's how I feel about her.
If you are in Atlanta and you need a DJ, check her out. She's international, she's worldwide. She'll come to you. You can book her out. Check her out here, and we're going to attach her stuff to the podcast after we finish. DJ Bonita, check her out. She DJ'd your 20th/40th birthday party, right?
She did, and it was one of the most epic nights of my life. It was so much fun, and I have her partially to thank for that, as well as you, because you always throw a great party.
Yep, well,
always.
Thank you. What can I say?
Yes,
what can
indeed.
I say? What can I say? But thank you for that. So we will be talking, as you said, about our. People keep saying integration, but I feel like reintegration. Let me explain why. To me, reintegration, I feel like you were one person, and that person, right? You had who you were. Then it's like you take your spirit, and your spirit or your soul or whatever you want to call it interacts and goes through this thing, and then that has to reintegrate with your ego or your person. And I've been having an experience. I've been going through it. I'm going to be honest.
Yeah.
Personally.
Talk about that, because it's been some deep stuff, both of us, but I think yours is like profound,
it's one of those things where it's kind of like, okay, I saw a lot of things, and a lot of the ancients and the people that talk about this, that have been doing it for all this time, they're like, look, this is the truth. Whatever you face is your truth, right? So everybody talks about, or a lot of folks talk about, they face their ego. I didn't encounter that, right? My ego, right? I mean, I guess unless you want to call my ego God is what I encountered, but like, I didn't encounter the whole ego thing, right? Now, the big thing that I did end up encountering was a lot of truths. And in those moments, there's nothing that you could tell me that would make me believe that was anything other than the truth, or at least for me or the universe, the truth, right? Now, with that being said, the biggest issue I've been having is resolving that with who and what I am, or what I believe myself to be, and all of these beliefs and ideas that I've had my entire life. That's been hands down, unequivocally, the most difficult thing that I've dealt with in my life. I'm being honest. Yeah.
Wow. And what have you found to anchor you or get you through that? Like, what's been working for you?
Well, I'm happy you said that. So what I've noticed is I'm changed in general, right? So there's a level, at least for me, of integration or reintegration that happened on its own. Like the learning how to love myself truly has just changed me, because that level of self-love leads to this bigger, for me, all encompassing love for this tree behind me, this tree over here next to me, all of you on here. It just leads to this bigger love for everything. And that love has just been something that's connected me and grounded me in a deeper way. So it's just, I noticed that, like, I was talking to a friend on Facebook. I was telling you about Keisha. Shout out Keisha if you're watching. But down in Florida, and she was telling me something that was going on, and people were messaging her, and I was like, hey, what are our brothers saying to you? And I just realized everything in the way that I'm talking to people is all from along those lines. It's what are our brothers, our sisters, no matter who the person is. I just see it as like, say, for example, you and I were born from the same physical mother, right? And then you tell me something that somebody else who was born from our physical mother, I'd say, oh, what's our brother saying? Or what's he saying, you know?
Right.
And I've noticed that the biggest change, I didn't have to do anything. This was just put into me.
Yeah.
The biggest change I've noticed is I literally now see everybody as family. I just saw a guy was asking us for money, and I knew that the money was a handicap and he needed it, but it wasn't that kind of thing. It was a deeper feeling that I felt. I just hugged the dude.
Yeah.
hugged another grown man just right today in the street.
Yeah,
Of
it was
Cartagena.
beautiful. It was
Date night
beautiful,
special,
and
right?
he was kind of like, you could tell he was kind of like, whoa, like I'm
He
not
didn't know what
used to this.
People are not used to receiving
Yeah,
this love. I'll dive deeper into the love and talk about that as we go, but I don't want to progress this too far until we get your part. Like, what do you feel like? Let's talk about reintegration for Mrs.
Man, yeah, I can resonate with a lot of what you said about the truth. Like you're shown so much. It's like your whole reality, the way your brain works, like everything is blown wide open. And then you come back into your daily life. And I think when I'd heard the word integration before I went through the ayahuasca experience, because I'd heard that phrase a lot. In fact, you know, like my business coach and I at one point were talking about like, well, you can help people with integration. And I thought it would be like process focused, right? Like, okay, I've got to have a process. So one of the things that I did almost immediately, I think it was 2 days after. The day after was just like going with the flow and being so grateful and happy for my life. And just that has definitely continued. I did journal about the experience, and that was really helpful for me to just like sort through all of the experience, because it was so much to fathom. Like it's unbelievable, imperceivable for a human mind to download like everything that you experience. But I so agree with you that it's more about like your being has changed. So it's less about I'm going to change this, I'm going to set this goal, I'm going to do this, and more about literally like leaning into your new or your remembrance of who and what you truly are. And I once again have to give credit to my spiritual coach, because we were having a conversation about the experience, and I was sharing with her a lot of, you know, what we shared on the podcast last week. And, you know, I was talking about seeing my ego and like you said, with my purpose and like my mission and like what I saw about myself, and like really making peace with that. Because I think there is an inherent part of when you see and know that on your way to your purpose or your mission or your role here in creation, you're going to have to meet some of your deepest fears, right? So like she gave me such great advice, and she was like, okay, well, you were in this experience and you saw your ego. She was like, what brought you back to you? Because you kept asking that question, who am I? Well, what did you find out, or what grounded you? And there is a place, and I think I shared this with you the other day. There is a place, whether you've had an ayahuasca experience or not, there's a place within you that is your home, like your soul, a place that you can sense within yourself that is just you. It's spirit, it's soul, it's like we talked about last time, the God within you. And so when I learned a lot about the divine feminine and my, you know, my role or my mission purpose, like with the divine feminine. And the thing that I keep hearing is like, just, you know, lean back and trust, like lean back and trust. And so that's really what I've been, instead of an older version of me would have been like, previous version of me would have been like, okay, how are you going to integrate all this? And my mind would have just been going. But this time it's more of a feeling, a sensation, a knowing, and then a like trusting. And I've had some real realizations about like manifesting and attracting and being, and I can share that a little bit later. But those are some of the things that I've been experiencing, and some of the things that have really worked for me, especially like that, like finding that place. And I would encourage anyone to like find that place within you that is your anchor, your home, that love, that peace, whatever it is that feels like the essence of you.
Very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
I heard you say a while back, and thank you for sharing all of that, but I heard you say a while back, you were like, you know, the human mind cannot grasp
Mm-hmm.
the infinity of God, or the concept of God, or something like that. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
People have said that, and I've heard that my whole life.
Yeah.
Right? I've never believed that.
Yeah.
Right? Like, and I don't even know why people say that. So I'm curious. It's like, because to me, it's like everything is everything, right? So we say like, hey, if you want $1 million, if you say I'll never have $1 million, you won't have $1 million.
Right.
So why do people? I mean, I know why. I already have my answer, but you specifically, as my wife,
yeah,
on our podcast tonight, let's ask this question: Why do you say that thing?
Well, I thought what I said was that my mind couldn't fathom everything that I experienced and perceived, but I will say, I remember saying that in the past about God, and maybe I did say that. I think that it really depends on how you think about the human mind, right? Is the human mind the part of us that is purely in our physical senses? Or is the human mind the part of us that is truly connected to God? And I do believe, like now after seeing God, right, and experiencing that and seeing the vastness and feeling that within me, I do think we can perceive and feel and fathom. But I also think coming out of an ayahuasca experience, there's the being, it's like the being part of you has changed, but there's still a repatterning that I personally feel like is still going on with my mind. And I want to be compassionate with myself about that, right? Because there's so much that's changed. And I think self-love is one thing that we've talked about a lot. So maybe this happens for everybody, where there's like a slow, like unveiling of everything that has occurred within you and everything that's changed within you. Or maybe it's just part of my road and my lesson, because I'm also learning self-love and self-compassion. Right. And that's one of the biggest, we were talking about this earlier, like that's one of the biggest things with myself in terms of giving myself self-compassion and self-love that I have struggled with in the past, is like wanting to grow faster, be here, like wanting to be more spiritual or a better person or whatever it is. So I think that it's, to go back to the question about like the human mind can't perceive God, I think we, the true us, can perceive God, but the way our human minds have maybe been conditioned, the
conditioned human mind can't perceive.
Exactly.
Well, my thing on that is this: it's like I got so many opinions on that, but number one, it's and if you want to, you know what, if you want to go on to something else, we can. I don't want to take the whole podcast to talk about this, but it's something I feel very strongly about. And it's like this: I would never, as a coach or as a teacher or as a father, I would never tell anybody to start off with what we can't do. But I remember growing up in the church. I grew up, and my granddad was a Baptist preacher, Unity Baptist Church, and they sent me to Catholic school because they didn't have any Baptist schools, so it was Catholic schools, and it's all the same umbrella of Christianity. And I remember both sects saying that the mind of God is, we could never know the mind of God and all this other stuff like that. And I'm like, listen, your own book that you're quoting from quite literally talks about how we're made in this person or thing's image, right? And on top of that, it's like, you don't even know the human mind. Like they don't even understand scientifically the human brain at all. Like they understand something like 5 to 10% of it. Same thing with DNA. They can look at it physically, but they don't understand. They can take it out of a person's head and look at it physically, but they're just finding out things about toroidal fields that surround our body and give off electromagnetic energy, right? They're finding things about the heart that are doing the same thing. They're finding out things about quantum entanglement and so forth and so on. So they literally don't know what they're talking about, right? So with that being said, the human brain, which literally science has no explanation for on how it works, the human heart, very similar. They actually found out recently, and this is a real thing, that the human heart is not a pump itself at all. The human heart is another toroidal field. When you think about toroidal fields, think about like a donut, but like a 360. It goes out in all directions, and there's like a hole in the middle. The earth is that way. It's the same thing, right? They found out that the human heart, it's actually the blood moving through the heart, and the heart is moving in response to the blood, not the other way around. So the vibration of the blood and the blood actually flowing in this like circle that is cyclone is what makes it look like the heart's pumping, but it's actually the other way around, right? So with all this being said, and all these things that are understood or becoming understood, or should I say re-understood, because the ancients knew this, all of this stuff, right? It's just that we're coming into a place where we're understanding that. I don't see the wisdom in us talking about what we can and can't. Now, this is not anything towards what you said. It just kind of took me to a place where I'm just realizing that so many people talk about what we can't do. And it's like, if you go into your relationship with God, whether you be Muslim, Christian, Buddhist, Zoroastrian, it doesn't, Hindu, whatever, it doesn't make a difference. If you go into whatever your relationship is with whatever you call God from a place of fundamentally, I can't understand this being or this person. What if I came into this marriage and I'm like, there's no way. Her brain is just beyond, it's just no way. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think you could.
I think it's a setup. I don't see the wisdom in it. I'm not saying that.
Yeah.
I don't mean to cut you off, but I'm not saying that inherently I'm not saying I understand the mind of God, right?
Right.
But I'm saying I don't see what it benefits me to take on that attitude.
Yeah, yeah, and I can also see like maybe where that would come from in terms of like the vastness and the beauty. It's like even when you're in a relationship, right? You're falling more in love with that person. You're learning more about that person every day. Like maybe some people in their relationship with God view it similarly to that, right? Like I'm learning more about God. I'm falling more in love with God. Like, like can't is a very strong
but that's
word.
Nice, and I hear you, but that's not what people are saying
Yeah,
when they're like.
I'm just saying.
I hear what you're saying
we don't
about
know
that,
everybody in the world, so I'm just saying like maybe it's possible.
But no, okay, I get what you're getting at, but we're getting off point. I'm saying the idea that people were. So you're telling me in the Catholic Church, when you grew up in the Catholic Church, and they were like, no man understands or knows the mind of God, that they were like, oh well, I got my own relationship with God, and oh, I'm falling deeper, and that's what they were telling you in the Catholic Church in North Dakota.
Again, coming back to the conditioned mind, yes. No,
so that's the point. I get what you're saying. I'm not taking anything away from that. It's a truth.
Yeah.
And it's definitely true. I'm simply saying that doctrine that I think both of us were exposed to as children.
Yeah, absolutely. We need to be aware of those types of programming and conditioning for sure.
That's all I'm saying.
I totally agree. Mm-hmm.
That's all I'm saying. But I think we have to take more, like, how do I say, like, oh, I don't have a word for this, but we have to take look, all right, I'm going to tell you a story real quick. So, as you know, Dominic, my son is mixed, right? And growing up, my grandfather was the patriarch of my family. You know what I mean? And, he was the pastor of this church, well respected in the community. We had so many members and all that, right? So, and my granddad, I love him to this day, and he's been gone for quite some time, for years, right? And there was a time where, and it's only happened with he and I once, where my son, the only mixed person, everybody else looks like me, darker skin. My granddad was light skinned, and he comes down and he says to my son's like Akasha's age at the time, and he's like, oh man, look at Dominic, he's got that good hair. And I'm like, well, hey, granddad, stop that. What are you talking about? Because if you're saying, I've not heard you say this to anybody else, but in the family, so what does that say about everybody else's hair in the family, right? Like, this is one of those kind of things where it's like that. So there was a moment where I had to, like, even despite my love and respect for him as a man and a father, I had to step to the patriarch and the man and the father and correct him, right? And I get that that's a masculine energy, but I think that when we encounter these things, like those type of things that are subconscious, that he didn't understand because of the generation that he went through, and subconscious inferiority and superiority complexes that a lot of people had from that time period, right? I think we all know that those existed and still exist to this day in quite a few people. I think that goes across the board beyond how people perceive themselves. So I'm saying that this is another one of those times, right?
Yeah.
So I don't think that we can talk, to me, from my point of view, that we can kind of just glaze this over. It's one of those things where it's like, hey, if you hear this and you feel like you're awake, or I don't even like to use the term awake, but if you feel like you are alive and you're of the living, then you can't just take these kind of doctrines on yourself anymore and just gloss them over and say, hey, like, because I don't know if somebody can or can't, but I just don't see the benefit of me saying to anybody what they can't do at the beginning of a thing. Yeah,
that's fair. What I will say, to go back to, I think one of the points that I was making is just, there's so many people, right, that have gone through ayahuasca and had an experience like we did that was very deep and profound. It is okay to not have it all figured out right away, right? Yeah. Some people may go through that experience and be like, wow, like I am so clear on my life, like this is amazing. And some people may have unfolding. Like I was given so much wisdom this week.
Hold on. But I don't want to go. Okay, I hear what you're saying, but I don't want to go down those roads, right? I'm not saying that, like, and you can go down that route. I'm not saying that everybody needs to have a revelation and understand the mind of God. I'm talking about specifically infrastructural things that people are taught. Like, hey, you have an A, you have an A, you're smart. You have an F, you're dumb. That's wrong, right?
Right.
You're human, you're fallible, and God is this perfect thing, and you can never know his mind. That's all I'm talking about, right? So I don't want to, I know where you're going with that, but I just want to clear that up, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's another thing that I really feel about this, and it's just truly, and what I saw was this. there's no higher or lower when it comes to people or things or anything like that. It's we all come here for these roles. If you want to even say we come here, because we don't even really go anywhere, is what I was shown, but we're all where and what we are because we decided to take on those roles, right? There's no, it's the world that create, and by the world I mean these, like, you take away all these buildings, and I said this before, these cars and this money and these all this stuff. This is just one big garden, right? What happens is it's all a fiction that we're all agreeing to, right? So it's like these roles do not exist. So it's just like somebody's like, oh, I'm a CEO and I'm a janitor, so I'm more important than get rid of all the janitors and then see what happens to that building, right? Everything's necessary. It's just that this world has put people in a position or scenario by which they feel like this is more important or this is less important, and I mean more and you mean less, right? It's none of that is what it is, and when we're in the spirit, we see that and we know that. But here we bought into a lot of those things. So I'm gonna come down off of this preaching horse.
Well, to build on that, I think, you know, we had some really great conversations with family and others after the experience, and to kind of share even more beyond what we shared last time. So last time we talked a lot about, like, you know, I saw God and I was aware of where I came from and who I am, and that God is in me and I am God just as much as you are God, right? I think it goes along with that. Like, somebody asked, well, do you believe then everybody is God? I'm like, yes, absolutely. Everybody is God. And I think when we think about this hierarchy, right, we all have different roles. And like for me, I learned a lot, like I said, about my role as a feminine being and like what that means. And I think we've been conditioned to believe like, oh, like it would be so much better if I was like the masculine in the leadership role and da-da-da-da-da. And it's like, no, remember this, you are God. God wanted to come through me and have this experience, just as God wanted to come through each and every one of you and have your particular experience. I think what we do want to embody or realize is like, do the seeking to find out and embrace. And I think we all know, but to better understand our role in the gifts we were given, how we can use them, and to have so much peace and acceptance of what that is.
That's
of
very
what
true.
that is. You know, I think like that's another thing that has been part of my integration is like acceptance. Acceptance.
Well, I think, well, number one, that's extremely true, or at least I agree with it. I'll say it like that. But I think the bigger issue is we're throwing around words like God, and it's like, okay, you're saying things like, which I agree with 100%. Well, I know, it's not even I agree, but I know that what you're speaking is the truth, right? But how do you say to somebody that you are God, but if somebody has an idea, like a lot of folks do, that God is this, what do you call them, less melanated person with a humongous beard and white hair sitting up in the clouds or up in space somewhere? How can everybody be that person or that thing when you're taught that that is like this Zeus type figure, more or less, when that's God, right? So it's like, it's kind of like the negative kind of, okay, like the word witch, right? Like, or there's different, like, or the word bitch, right? Bitch literally means female dog, but we've given it all these connotations to take it away from what it is, and people feel a way about the word. The same thing with the word witch, and there's tons of other words, right? The same thing with God, right? I feel like when we say things like everybody's God, then I understand what you're saying, and I'm sure there's a lot of others or other folks that do, but there are a lot of other people who are on these journeys. And it's like, they're like, what are you talking about? Like, oh, you're the devil, you know what I mean? And like that kind of stuff. So it's like, I get that our message isn't for everybody, right? I get that, and it's a powerful message, and it's the truth, but it's also one of those things where it's kind of like, you have love for our brothers and our sisters that are out there, and we love everybody, and we understand where they are and where they're coming from to the best of our ability, but we also have to speak our truth, right? So it's kind of one of those things where it's just like, well, look, whatever your and that's why you hear me say things like that, whatever your definition. I think that's why a lot of folks that think and feel the way that we do, they say God or the universe or the creator, whatever you want to call that thing.
Source, energy,
you know, it is what it is. But it's like, I guess I'm speaking to y'all, any of y'all that believe that God, for you, God is this big person that is sitting there, and that's fine. If that's your belief, that's fine. Have that belief. But just even in the Bible, which is where you got that idea from, out of context, but even in the Bible where you got that idea from, it says that you're his child, right? Or you were created in his image, right? So even if you want to take that approach, right, if you're literally, because a Bible is a book, and books and words, some people take them allegorically, other people take them literally, but words are there to mean something. So whether you take it as an allegory or a simile or a euphemism, then bottom line, it's insinuating that in some spiritual way you're like that which you were created, that kind of child. Or whether you take it literally, this is a father and it's a child, then that's a more literal definition. But either way it goes, spiritually, allegorically, being insinuated, or if it literally means what it means, the bottom line is whatever made you and brought you here, you're made like that. It's as simple as that. Right? And to externalize that and to say that it has nothing to do with you and it's not in you and you're not in it is literally the same thing as saying to your own child that, man, you're nothing like me, which can be that way physically and personality, but they came from you. Right? And there's some, at least on a physical standpoint, and some people would say spiritual standpoint, there's some kind of similarity. So,
Absolutely.
Yeah. Feel like I'm preaching on Date Night Special.
Where would you like to go from here?
I feel like I'm preaching on Date Night Special. So anyway, let's finish up with the integration or the reintegration. So for me, it's just, I'm still in a place where I can't not speak truth anymore.
Right.
I can't sit in the presence of things that are of darkness and just be quiet. I'll say that's the biggest thing that I got. What about you for integration or reintegration?
Like I said before, acceptance, trusting. I learned a lot about, or I have since, as the unfolding has been occurring, I've learned a lot about like energy, and particularly, I guess all of us have feminine energy in us, and maybe even this resonates with the masculine. I don't know. But I think because of the oneness that we experienced in our journey, I learned a lot about, rather than manifesting from a place of like, okay, I'm here in my vibration and I'm gonna, attract this, or it felt for me like energetically, it felt very like separate and trying to connect with, like, whether it be a person or something you want to manifest, like a physical thing, abundance, whatever it is. Even like with my daughter, like I used to feel, even though we're very connected, right, on the most intimate level, she's still breastfeeding, like we're still very connected. Like at times I would still feel that like separation. She's in her body and I'm in mine. And I've learned to like soften that energy, where it's less about energy coming up upon energy and more about bringing energies together and like bringing things to you. And
how would you, because this is a new concept for me, and I'm your husband, and I'd imagine it's new for a lot of people. So how would you recommend that people that are interested in what you're describing, and I'm listening too here, I'm learning right now on this podcast. How would you recommend that people do this? What do you call this? Energy blending or energy merge? Like, what do you call this? Bleeding?
It's like, okay, the way that I think about it, and this is how it came to me, this is how it was downloaded to me, is to be more like water, right? Water, like it melds into things, right? Like water is such a powerful element, and it flows. It doesn't fight. It doesn't force. It's flowing. And it's supported, like Mother Earth, Mother Gaia, like we're supported by the divine. We don't have to force, we don't have to push, we don't have to view like ourselves versus someone else, because we are one. We come from that same source, right? Like it's more about like embracing that oneness and allowing the manifestation to come from there, as opposed to like seeing ourselves and the thing that we desire as separate and needing to bring those two things together. Okay. So like the best way
what do you mean? Like taking a piece of yourself and what do you mean by that?
It's just more thinking about like flowing together. So, okay, I guess the best example I can give is, so Akash, there was something the other day, we were on the beach, and our daughter is very strong-willed. She's a very beautiful, strong-willed.
She's my grandma.
Little lady.
Yeah, she's like my grandmother.
She wanted to do something. I can't remember what it was. And I couldn't let her. It was unsafe for her in whatever capacity. I, again, can't even remember the details. But normally I would just kind of like, swoop her up and get her out of there. Like, okay, this in the physical, like I'm her mom, I have to protect her. But instead of just like swooping her up, I was like, there was a level of empathy. There was like, okay, soften your energy, move, like I'm going to physically move into her space. I'm still going to pick her up. I'm still doing the same thing, but it was less like force and more like flowing. it's again, like there's so much that happened in this ayahuasca experience that's not about like the action or even the mental part of it. It's more about like a feeling. It's more about a flow. It's more about embodiment.
I've seen things like this before. Like this sounds to me like something you're going to be able to cultivate. And then once you get it down, a program that you can put out there to help people.
Absolutely.
Because this is, I've not heard this before. I mean, I've heard about the law of attraction, men and women speaking about this. And like you said, it's more of a magnet. I've never heard anybody, you're talking. So can I do a paraphrase this?
Please,
to me,
I think you will. Yes.
To me, to me, it sounds like you literally sound like the ocean. It's like, so the law of attraction is your magnet, you're here. And you think like that thing, or you become that thing, and you polarize that thing, right? And that's actually not even how magnets work, actually, by the way. Magnets are one polarity, and what they pull are another, right? The two magnets, the things of the same polarity, they actually push each other away, by the way. So when people say like attracts like, I've never understood that. It's actually opposite attracts opposites, right? But what it sounds to me like what you're saying, it sounds just like, as a man who's lived near the beach, the ocean for almost a year now, the ocean comes up and it grabs stuff and it pulls it back under. And then it goes into the beach again, and it keeps going like that. That's what it sounds to me like.
That's so perfect. And like, that's the thing, is like so much of the information we're giving on manifesting is like almost there. And law of attraction is like almost there. But it's still it's to me, what I think we forget about sometimes when we think about law of attraction, it's so mental. And we forget, at least I have in the past, that we're all from the same source. So I think that's what it came from, is like seeing God, right? The source energy. This, what I've talked to you looked like waves or an ocean, but really black, like a sky, like that deep, like knowing that we are everything we see, everything that is comes from that. So if we are all that source, there is nothing that's like not us. There's nothing that's not already in our realm. So it's literally just getting on the same wavelength.
Does that sound like, well, would you liken that to when these people that have said, because this sounds like something new to me, but would you liken this to when people talk about that? So the law of attraction is you think that way and you attract that, right? But is maybe what you're saying, is that closer to the, okay, well, you think that way, but is that the feeling piece maybe? Like you get the emotions of it and then the emotions bring it in, or is that something completely different?
It is. It's
if you don't know now, that's cool.
I wouldn't call it emotions. It's more of, I wouldn't call it a vibration. It's literally like the mental part is like literally recognizing that you are not separate from that person, that place, that thing.
I don't know if I heard that before.
And knowing that, like, if we are all God and we are all from God and we have God within us, there is nothing separate from us. So all we've got to do is like literally know that and trust in that. And I mean, there's also a part of this that goes with trusting, that goes with that leaning back and that acceptance and that trusting. Like, you're naturally going to repel the things that aren't for you. Like when you're just in your God state, when you're in your God state and you're just in your essence, you're going to naturally attract everything that is meant for you as well. Well,
this literally sounds like the Bible. They're like, so if you read the Bible through and through, they quote a book in there. There's two quotes in the book of Isaiah and I can't remember the other book, but where they quote the book of Yasher, right? Or Jasher. And the same thing with the book of Enoch. And I'm like, okay, well, listen, if the Bible, I talked to my granddad about this, the theologian, this dude had a doctorate in theology, right? And I'm like, if something was taken out of the Bible, but it's quoted in the Bible, wouldn't you have to take that book out of the Bible too? And he kind of smiled at me and but the bottom line is there were things that were taken out that shouldn't have been. So like if you were raised Jewish, they read all of this stuff, right? It's just, they're taught to them. They get that it's outside of the Torah because, they believe that to be the 5 books of Moses, but whatever. Anyway, in the book of Jasher, it talks, well, it's Yasher because there's no J in Hebrew, but so it's actually Yasher. But anyway, in the book of Jasher, it talks about how Abraham and we can go into all of these lists of these different people. They had so much faith, right? It's talking about how you're talking about have faith. And it's like, there's tons of examples where Judah and his brothers, they went up against like 150 guys, went up against like 300,000, 600,000 guys and literally fought them off. But every time they went into these battles, they literally had such a strong connection with God or with the creator that they did it. So, I think I'm of the belief or of the thought that there's a physical side of the story that really happened, but there's also a representative side of that. So I read that as like, it's, it could be history, right, as well. It may be, I can't prove it because they can't find most of these people's graves. I choose to think that it is history, right? But above and beyond that, there's a deeper spiritual story behind that, which is like whatever you believe and what you accept. And when you have it, like I look at it as, you know, when Judah and Jacob, when they would cry to God and honor their covenant and they believed in him and held in him, it was that absolute belief and certainty in who they are and what they are and in the connection that they had. And it's what led to that, right?
Yeah.
The Bible tells you all the time, have complete faith in God, right? That's why I really like Reverend Ike. Reverend Ike always talks about, or he talked about, rest him, when he talked about connecting with the God inside and having that with you, right? And the same thing, the Bible says all that. So I don't know that much of, or if anything of what you're saying is that different from what's in the Bible, what's in the Torah, what's in the, I haven't read the Quran entirely, so I don't want to speak on that, but I don't know that these things are entirely different. It ain't different from Buddhism at all.
Yeah, no. And I would say, like, intellectually, it's not that far off of how I've thought about it before, but the word that keeps coming up is like sensation. Like there's a different sensation, not external sensation, but an internal, like an internal sensation. And like certainty is a word that I really like. I've used that word a lot in terms of like the faith, like the certainty. This is more of a knowing. This is more of a like, I'm so, and I'm still growing into this, but it's like, it's so much knowing that there is a peacefulness about the way I desire and choose to manifest going forward.
Lord, I feel like I done forced you into a corner. I thought we was gonna go on other topics today, but I feel like, yeah, my bad. But this was very good conversation. I feel like this was a podcast that needed to happen.
Cheers to date night.
Hey,
these things come up on the podcast live on date night.
Hey, no, this is something that needed to happen, and we needed to talk about integration, bringing these things back into us, and so forth and so on. So we can go into our next week topic next week.
All right.
We were kind of going to bring a few things into play, but it ain't happening tonight.
Nah. Do you have anything else on this topic?
Well, I feel like I can go on and on and on.
I know,
you know,
right?
But what I will close with, because I think we got to wrap this up. But what I'll close with is this: when you have that love that I talked about on the last episode, but I'll actually bring it back up again into this night's episode. When you have that internal love for yourself first, right? So one of the key things I was shown was this. And one of the commandments actually that Yeshua gave was, he said, look, I'm going to give you guys a new commandment. Love yourselves. I'm sorry. He said, love each other as you love yourself, and do unto others as you do unto yourself. If we all just kept that literally, you don't even need any other commandments. I mean, if you literally think about that, right? Most people are not physically going to kill themselves, right? Probably not. Most people are not going to rape themselves. I don't even know how you do such a thing, right? Or cause harm to themselves or rob themselves, consciously at least, right? So that, to me, is a very strong commandment. And a lot of these folks, like I said, with the NDE people and with us as well, that have crossed over and come back, we've seen that on the other side, there's only unconditional love. That's it. So I think that the one rule or law, if there is such a thing, is this: love yourself first. Truly love to learn yourself first. Love yourself first. Forgive yourself for any and everything that you've done. Bring it to yourself. And I think you're going to end up teaching a course on that, but being honest with yourself, seeing yourself for who you are, being honest with the things that you're holding against yourself and letting them go. And through letting those things go, you can feel a level of love that I feel for myself. And I'm going to tell you right now, my love for you is drastically deeper since I've done this in that ceremony. It's drastically deeper with our baby. It's drastically deeper for our I love my nanny. I love my father. I love this tree. I love these ladies here in the orange here. And y'all can't see these people, this guy over here in the white shirt. Like, I love everybody, but I wasn't capable of that when I didn't have it completely, right? Like, we all say these things, but to me, until that was really filled within, I wasn't. I love each and every one of y'all watching. Just watch this now. If you're watching this podcast tonight or in the daytime, I know it's night for us. I mean this from my heart. I truly, genuinely love you, right? And that's the key thing for me. Love yourself. Learn to love yourself above everything else, so that from that love, you can unconditionally love everybody else. If we all did that tomorrow, heaven on earth.
Wow.
Maybe 2 weeks. Maybe 2 weeks, you know?
Wow. There's so much truth in that. The only thing I would say in addition to that is, like, from a personal experience, because you shared this with me about the forgiveness and self-love, and really think about the things that even if it's tiny and deep within, that you're holding against yourself. Because when I thought about that, and I thought about, okay, what haven't I forgiven myself for? I thought it was going to be like big things, right? Like mistakes that I'd made so many years ago. And for some of us, that may be true. And if you haven't done that work, go back and do that work, right? Go back and do that healing. But I think there's a daily journey, right? Those ways that we, as accountable people, when things don't go perfectly and we blame ourselves, right? Or like I said earlier, we're not growing as fast as we want, or we're not at the goals that we've set for ourselves. We can't change, we can't grow if we first don't accept and forgive. So it's not about saying like, okay, like, yeah, I'll just keep doing the same pattern over and over again. It's about, no, I accept it. I forgive myself. And I also know that I have God within me, or I am God. So I am capable of everything. I don't need to hold on to this. I can let it go and be born again today. So I think like self-love can be a very difficult topic because there's so many different ways to do it. But I think to your point and the great wisdom that you shared, like start with that forgiveness. And the second part that I would add, based on my own experience and a lot of clients I've worked with, trust yourself. Trust yourself. That is one of the biggest lessons that I believe all of us are learning, especially as women. We are definitely learning that. Trust yourself, trust God, and know that you can trust the God within you.
This has been the Ascended Life Podcast. I don't think you even noticed that they turned the music back on. It's going to start interfering with our mic, so that must mean they want us out of here.
That means it's divine timing. It's time to wrap it up.
Divine timing. You're going. I was like, I hope y'all got all of that because that was some deep wisdom.
Yeah.
But these mics are weird with certain vocals for phones, but it's all good. Yes. Not vocals for phones, but vocals from certain songs, should I say. So this has been yet another episode of the Ascended Life Podcast.
Peace and love to all of you. Thanks for being here with us.
Peace and love. Thank y'all for being here. Tune in next week. Who knows what we're going to talk about?
Exactly.
I do.
We will be shown the way.
I know. I already know. All right. Peace and love. I will see you guys next week, or we will both see y'all next week. It's been the Ascended Life Podcast. Peace and love.